Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone around the world. I am Paul Sisler, and this is In the Moment. Today, I bring to you Joe Walsh. Hello, Joe. How are you, my friend?
Not the famous Joe Walsh, Paul, the other Joe Walsh. It's good to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I took the dogs out for a long walk this morning. I'm temporarily, Paul, living in D.C. It's cold and rainy here, probably different than where you are. But I'm looking forward to relaxing today and watching some football later.
Yes, yes. And who's your pick? Eagles, right?
Well, you'll appreciate this. My name is Joe Walsh, so I have to root for the Eagles, right? I have to.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. Well, I took my little pup for a walk this morning, and it was a wonderful 50 degrees out here in this beautiful desert that I live in. So I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
Hey, Paul, you're in a great part of the world. I love the Southwest. I love the desert, and there's part of me that would love to settle there one day soon.
Yes, yes. Again, it's gorgeous. The weather is gorgeous. So tell me a little bit about yourself, because I mean, I see you on MSNBC, Fox, CNN, and of course, they're always coming at you with the questions. And I want to get to know you a little bit more. So, kind of like, tell me where you're from, how you grew up, and what led you into politics.
Paul, born and raised in a big old Irish Catholic family of 9 kids in suburban Chicago. Grew up pretty comfortably middle class. Loved my mom and dad to death. They both passed away within the last few years. I've always been really intrigued in politics. I've always been cause driven. I've never been money driven. When I got elected to Congress, I was the poorest member of Congress because I've never been driven by money. I've always been driven by trying to make the world a better place. You and I may disagree politically. I've always been kind of libertarian in my politics, not always looking to government to make things better. So that's kind of always driven me, and it's always gotten me into teaching and running for office and getting in front of people and trying to get people to think.
Excellent, excellent. You and I, we have a lot of things in common, and I've followed your politics probably more now in the last few years than I ever did before. Donald Trump, believe it or not, was my inspiration to write a book, which got me into politics because I didn't like what he stood for, and I was afraid for where he would take us. So that's why I wrote, and
Yep.
I haven't been wrong, So, and the book, it's amazing because it led me to a lot of different avenues of things that I never really looked at before, never cared about, never thought about. So I've been opened up to a whole new world here, and for about the last 6 years, 6 years, I've been headstrong in a lot of this stuff.
By the way, Paul, kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
I wish I had been outspoken against Trump back in 15 and 16. I did vote for him, and I've had to publicly apologize for that. So I give you a lot of credit for recognizing what he was at the beginning. I did not sufficiently recognize that.
Well, I almost voted for him. And when I did some research into him, I didn't like some of the things that I found. So I went to the lesser evil. And for me, politics, I am blown away at where our country has gone from when I was growing up during the Carter and Reagan era, versus where we're at now. It's just a whole different game, and it's so mind blowing. For instance, Greg Santos. What's your thoughts on Santos? I mean, not Greg, George Santos.
George Santos. Oh, hey, Paul, for all we know, his name is Greg. We don't know.
I mean,
Um,
they put the Super Bowl together today, so I mean,
Look, Santos is not a surprise. Um, I left the Republican Party 3 years ago, almost exactly to the date. When Donald Trump is the leader of a party, and he still is, and look, I've been a politician. All politicians lie to a degree. All politicians fudge and hedge and embellish.
Mhm.
But we never, ever, ever have seen anything like Donald Trump. He lies as he breathes. So if that's the leader of your party, it's not a surprise that we get an imitator like a George Santos, who clearly is a pathological liar as well.
Yes. Now, I just heard yesterday, I think the Democrats have actually started the paperwork and the filing for him to be expelled from Congress. Do you think enough Republicans will sign on to that to actually have him expelled?
No, ain't going to happen. And Paul, you and I may disagree, but I think, look, I think that's silly. Again, I've got a contrarian view on this. Yeah, Santos lied, and he lied about everything. But so what? He got elected, and it's not his job. He should be a decent enough person to tell the truth when he's running for office. But if
Right.
he chooses to lie and the Republicans don't call him out on it during the campaign, and the
Hmm.
Democrats don't call him out on it, and the media doesn't call him out on it, well, then it sucks, but the voters voted for him. He's a legitimate member of Congress now, and he'll be there for 2 years.
Yep. Bingo. Bingo. Exactly. The people didn't do their research. And if people would have researched him a little bit more, dug into him a little bit more, they may have found this stuff out and he may never have gotten elected, but he did. So I think you and I are kind of on the same page there and all that. I would definitely like to see him gone, but let's have the voters do that 2 years from now. Uh,
What I think, Paul, what's really cool about the whole Santos thing is, look, I think America is in a lot of trouble. I think our country is, we have not been this divided, I think, as a nation since just before the Civil War. I said that before Trump got
mhm,
elected.
I
I
agree.
think our politics is really broken. I
Hmm.
don't believe politicians can fix our politics. I think the American people are going to have to get off their ass and demand real change. And
Yes.
this whole Santos thing is just another example of that. The American people in that district, they got to own it. And hopefully this teaches people around the country a real lesson. Pay attention to who's running for office.
Yes. Yes. And that See, I want to get a hold of Jesse Ventura because one of the things that I saw a video of him talking about how we need to eliminate the whole party aspect of it to where people would actually research the people they're going to vote for a little bit more if there wasn't an R or a D in front of the name. Because a lot of people right now, when they go to the voting booth or they get their ballot, R, D, 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 D. Who is this person? They don't care because it's my party. That's who I'm voting for.
Yeah.
So I think if we eliminated parties, period, and we had to actually look at who the person is, what they stand for, what they believe in, does it align with the beliefs that I have? I think we would get a more honest election. But
I
that's
agree with your overall premise.
mhm.
I don't know that we can get rid of parties. I think an easier solution is another party or two to break up this two-party duopoly.
Yes, and either way, the two-party duopoly has to go.
It has to go, Paul, but it's going to the only way it will go is if the American people make it go.
Bingo.
Because both Republicans and Democrats, they are too incentivized they're going to keep the duopoly.
Yeah. Oh, definitely, definitely. Um, my next question goes to classified documents. We've seen a lot in the news. It's kind of quieted down a little bit in the last week, but Pence, Trump, Biden, all of them have classified documents. Obviously, one person, it was handled in one way. With two others, it was handled in another way. And there's a lot of people that don't see a difference in how it was handled and how the individuals handled it, how the Department of Justice handled it, how the FBI handled it. What's your take on the whole document situation?
It shouldn't happen. But I also think we need to reform our classified document categorization process. What we do to call certain documents classified and not. We really need to tighten that up, because I think this is a lot more pervasive than people realize. Most people, presidents, vice presidents, former secretaries of state, accidentally taking classified documents with them. That happens more than people think. But you know what? Again, Biden, Pence, Trump, they did what they shouldn't have done. Own it, man up, apologize, and cooperate. The only difference there is only one of those three men refused to cooperate. That's Trump.
Yep.
That's the single difference in these cases.
Exactly. Now, one of the things that I've talked about with some other people and all that is we're all looking at Trump, we're all looking at Pence, we're all looking at Biden. They have these classified documents. How come nobody's looking at the National Archives and how they handle everything in relation to what comes in, how it comes in? I mean, when you have evidence in the criminal justice system and it's put into evidence, there's a chain of custody that you have to go through, and everybody's got to sign off on who's got it, where it's at, when it's going to be back, so on and so forth. Are we not doing this at the National Archives?
I think that's a great point, Paul. I think that entire process needs to be reviewed. I think we're at a point generally where, again, our politics is broken, and a lot of our institutions and norms in government need to be reviewed. And this is one. You've identified one. Because our government, I would argue, is no longer kind of meeting the needs of the American people. And I know the Republicans politicize this when they talk about the fucking deep state and all of that. But we need to make sure the FBI and the Justice Department, every one of these agencies, constantly needs to be reviewed, including the archives.
Yes.
And we need to encourage and support whistleblowers in all of these government agencies when they have the courage to come forward.
Right. See, for me, the biggest problem that I see is that there's a lot of things that are considered traditional. Okay. A president did or did not do this. A congressperson did or did not do this. They act in a certain way. This is tradition, good faith. We believe that they're going to do this way, blah, blah, blah. And I don't think a lot of the rules or regulations have been solidified because of tradition. I think they need to be solidified, because if they would have been solidified decades, if not a century ago, then like the National Archives, the whole custody, chain of custody, who's got what, when are you returning it, what documents do you have? Because personally, I would think that the National Archives would know each and every document that each and every politician has, when they checked it out, when it went into their, custody, but they don't, do they?
No, and Paul, I say this as a former member of Congress who served on the Government Oversight Committee. This really is Congress's most important job, I believe. The legislative branch is to provide this oversight. And it hasn't gotten done in a long, long time. And now there's an opportunity to do it on this issue. Biden, Pence, and Trump all did what they were not supposed to do. You would think Congress then could have a bipartisan, rigorous oversight process to look at the National Archives, to look at what the entire process. But that won't happen because
Correct.
the Republicans on these committees, now running these committees, are solely going to go after Joe Biden and keep their focus on Joe Biden. It's a shame.
Right. Revenge. Revenge.
Yeah.
That's all it is. They don't care about the American people. They want to get revenge because everything that's happened to them. Well, now we got to lash back out. Why not just run the government instead of worrying about all this other BS?
Well, you say revenge, and you're right. I would be more specific. It's revenge for the stolen 2020 election.
Yes.
When you look at everything Republicans are investigating, Twitter, Facebook, the deep state, Hunter Biden's laptop, Fauci, COVID, everything, it's all because Republicans in the House, reflecting Republican based voters, do believe the 2020 election was stolen. And so they need to prove that Twitter stole it or the FBI, the deep state, stole it. That's what they're investigating.
Right. Exactly. Which we all know is a bunch of BS to some degree. So, the balloons, these unidentified objects that we're now shooting down. What are your thoughts on this? Political, or is it just something that we are now noticing that's been going on for a long time?
Well, I'd say two things, Paul. I think this has been going on for a while. And I think that rightly, the American people really don't know a lot of what our agencies and our military know. And that's as it should be. And like this whole balloon thing, Paul, is just, so there's a balloon a week and a half ago, way up there, we find it. And then for an entire week, everybody on social media and in the media, and I was on CNN and MSNBC this last week, everybody becomes an expert on what that balloon is, what that balloon does, what we should do to the balloon. All these commentators and talkers and tweeters and everybody, and none of us really know what the deal was. None of us know if the Biden administration, once they identified that the original balloon, right away they were able to counter every intelligence aspect that balloon was engaged in and throw it right back in their face. We don't know any of that, but this issue, Paul, and every issue, we all right away go to our corners and right away we spew our talking points to score our political points. And the balloon issue is a perfect one because we're all pretty ignorant. We don't know. We don't know at all what these latest two unidentified objects were that were shot down.
Right.
But right away, we either blame Biden or applaud Biden for shooting them down without even knowing what he shot down.
Exactly. Again, the politics of it, the R's in front of your name or the D's in front of your name. It's not about what the actual situation is. It's now the politics of this is what this side wants. This is what this side wants. And nothing else matters.
It's Paul. It's like, it's like immediately after a mass shooting, we all pounce. We don't think, we don't reflect. We don't wait for any facts to come in. The minute there's a mass shooting, we pounce to score our political points.
Yes.
That's not a good thing. And I used to do a lot of that. I still do some of it.
Yes, I know. And in my book, you'll notice I have a whole chapter on the Second Amendment. One of the biggest chapter in my book is on the Second Amendment and what we need to do. Because again, people are coming at it from a side versus the reality of what's going on in the world. And if they would actually look at all the statistics and utilize logic, deductive reasoning, and common sense, I believe that I've come up with a very good solution, which I'll wait until you get to it and we can have another discussion on that another
I'd like
day.
that.
All right. Now, the biggest part of this whole conversation that I wanted to bring you to is taxation, universal basic income, and universal health care. What are your views on these things? And taxation, let's see, how do I want to approach this and all that? Let's start. Do you think that UBI, universal basic income, and universal health care are good ideas to implement, regardless of the cost of it, in comparison to we have tax money that goes to infrastructure. We have tax money that goes to our police forces. We have tax money that goes to a lot of things. Why not healthcare and an income?
My initial gut reaction to both, Paul, and remember, our politics could be a little different. I'm generally pretty libertarian. So without getting into the numbers, when I look at UBI, Universal Basic Income, as I understand it, I'm opposed to the concept because I'm opposed to the concept of the government giving any able-bodied American direct income assistance. And push back and fight back on me, Paul. My philosophy is that I want government to help only take care of people who cannot take care of themselves. Mm-hmm. In my ideal world, Paul, that's where we are. So universal basic income, no. Income assistance to help people who cannot take care of themselves, yeah.
Okay. I am going to push back.
Do.
Yes. Now, when Andrew Yang ran for president, he initially brought forward the idea of a universal basic income. And I was with you. I was like, no, I'm completely against it. But then I did a lot of research into the idea of universal basic income. And people like Martin Luther King, Kennedy, Huey Long, and it goes all the way back to like the 1500s to Morin Vives, where the example that was given is that when you go back to the 1500s, you have people that are stealing bread, and the penalty for doing that is death, and yet they're still stealing bread. So the idea was given that why not just give them an income so that they can pull themselves up and further better themselves. And that kind of resonated. And I kind of thought about it. It's like, Andrew Yang wants to give a large amount. My idea isn't a large amount. Mine is basically a quarter of what it costs to live. Everybody should get. And what this does is it gives everybody a little extra income that if they need it, it gets them by. And if they don't need it, they can stockpile it to where if there's ever a rainy day, they have something there that can help them. And as I kind of look into it more and more, I think a universal basic income, especially with the AI cyber industry that we're coming forward to, I truly believe that a universal basic income on a smaller scale than what Andrew Yang was talking about would be very beneficial. And because I don't like to discriminate, I think everybody, no matter how rich or poor, should get it. And with a new taxation system, we can actually afford to do it. There was a UBI test run in Stockton, California, that proved how well it helped out people that, were struggling, and helped them either catch up on their bills to where they could get a step forward, go back to school while they were working, all these different things that it enabled them to do that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to do so. So with that, I now support a universal basic income.
Who's at the beginning of that, and I appreciate all of that. Who you mentioned they're still stealing bread. Who's stealing bread?
This was back in the 1500s.
No, I know that, but you said they're still stealing bread. So who's stealing bread today?
Well, you have a lot of impoverished people that, they may not be actually going into the stores and stealing bread, but they might be doing other things that, is related to criminal activity, doing things, stealing copper, stealing aluminum, stuff like that, because they need money to put food on the table. They're doing these different things. They might start selling drugs, using drugs. There's a lot of other things that the impoverished will do to try to survive.
Okay, I get that. But I think you'd agree with me that the vast majority of impoverished people in America don't do any of those things. And I think the numbers would back that up. I mean, most poor people in America are not criminals. Most poor people in America do not steal. So it just strikes me as wrong that we'd try to reward impoverished people who would steal or engage in criminal activities when most poor people aren't doing that, and they're getting by or struggling to get by, but doing the best they can.
Let me ask you this. Have you ever been homeless?
No, I've been poor, but I don't think I've ever been homeless. No.
Okay. I've been homeless twice in my life, Joe. Okay. And the first time was my own undoing. Okay. First time was my own undoing. And I was fortunate because I had a job.
Yeah.
Okay. And if I wouldn't have had that job, I wouldn't have come out of it. The second time was not my doing. Okay. And sometimes things hit you, and now you go from just simply being either middle class, lower middle class, or poor into a position of I've lost my home, I've lost everything, and now I'm on the streets. Okay. A UBI would have prevented my second homelessness. Okay.
Well, maybe, Paul, we're closer than I think. I'm not opposed to the government helping to provide temporary assistance for people who are in a situation like that. I'm fine with that. I think there's a way you and I could come together on that. I'm all about the government helping people who cannot help themselves, who cannot take care of themselves. And so I think temporary assistance forms the basis of a lot of the government support that we provide. So I mean, I'm fine with that. I just don't want anything permanent.
See, where a lot of the problems come in along with it, Joe, is there are laws that a lot of places have that prevent people getting the help that they need, especially if they've become homeless, because you have to have an address. And the biggest thing that I found when I was in Las Vegas is that the people that I ate at a lot of different places with and talked with that had been homeless for a long time, that tried to not be homeless, they couldn't do anything because they didn't have an address. They couldn't get their driver's license back. They couldn't get an identification back. They couldn't get their social security. They couldn't get a job because they had no address. They couldn't get a P.O. box because they had no permanent address. And a lot of these places throughout the country have laws written that you can't use a homeless shelter as a permanent address. You can't use a day-by-day hotel rental place as a permanent address, which prevents homeless people from not being homeless. So
I agree with that, Paul. I agree that those laws are problems. I think homelessness, you look at, especially it's pervasive right now, especially look at Los Angeles.
Yes.
I mean, I think the problem is per population, the most extreme in Los Angeles, but you're right. And even homeless people have a hard time moving into shelters because typically some of the laws set up don't allow homeless people to bring their stuff into shelters, and homeless people don't want to lose their stuff. So which makes sense that they have out on the street. I think that a lot of the government agencies and bureaucracies that deal with the issue of homelessness are like way behind where they should be. I think there are some private sector companies, some that we ought to look at, who can find some pretty innovative solutions to creating housing and incentivizing homeless people to get into that housing.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But see, this is where my whole plan in my book comes together. We got some comments here. I'm going to go to the comments first.
Sure.
We have Bryce that says, "What does Joe think of the Forward Party movement and Andrew Yang?"
That's a great question. I thought about joining the Forward Party. Look, Bryce, great question, and I'll give you a direct answer. I have been arguing for a third or a fourth party for a long, long time before the Forward Party came up. I am now of the belief, Bryce, that right now the biggest threat to our country is not the lack of a third party right now. It's my former political party. My former political party is fully anti-democracy. So right now I'm focused on defeating Republicans. But I know the need for a new party is still there. My problem with the Forward Party is, as I looked into it, they don't stand for anything. Parties are groups of people who come together because they have a shared ideology, a shared belief system. The Forward Party really doesn't yet have an ideology. They're just all, we're not Republican, we're not Democrat, we're forward. What does that mean?
Okay.
But Paula and Bryce, I wish them success, and I'd love to see a couple other efforts like that out there right now.
Definitely. All right. We have another question or statement. All human beings should have their basic needs met: food, water, and shelter. We shouldn't need to work to stay alive.
That was Barbara, right?
Yes.
That's my favorite question. And Barbara, I appreciate it. Here's the thing. I don't believe in America you have a right to put food on your plate. I don't believe in America you have a right to have a roof over your head. In America, anyways, Barbara, these are not rights. They're benefits. You and I may think that every human being in America deserves a roof over their heads. Well, then we have a government that then needs to pass laws to make that a government-approved benefit. But in America, our notion of rights are negative rights. Our notion of rights in America are things that we're born with that government can't interfere with. Like, I have the right to believe in whatever God I want to believe in, to say whatever I want to say, to have a gun to defend myself, and on and on. But we don't have positive rights in America. You don't have the right to a really good job. You don't. Paul, maybe enough Americans think like everybody should have a good job. Well, then pass a law and make that a benefit. Does that make sense?
I see the perspective. I understand the concept that you're bringing, and that's something that I'm going to have to sleep on. I'm going to have.
And by the way, Paul, I agree with Barbara in that I believe in my heart every human being should be able to eat and survive and get through every day. And in essence, we as a society all try to make that a possibility through government, through churches, through charities, through neighborhood groups. Ideally, in my world, Paul, those who have help take care of those who don't have.
Right. You see, and that's kind of what I have when I wrote this book, because I came up with a new taxation system. If you recall, I told you to look into the GDP, the GNP, and the GNI, okay? Which, when you look at those formulas, none of those formulas count transactional revenue, okay? They They count profits, but they don't count transactional revenues. Now, I got a graph here that I want to show you. This is all of the corporations on the NASDAQ, and this is only the first one, which I list. I go through every single one of them, okay? So just so you know, I went through every single corporation on the NASDAQ, okay? Every single one of them. I have, this is just book one, basically, chart one of the NASDAQ, where I go through each and every one, total revenue, gross profit, net income, and income tax that they either paid or received from the government. Okay. Now, I bring this up because when I found out, because I was trying to figure out a new way to tax. So how can we bring in taxation? Because if I'm going to support a universal basic income, if I'm going to support universal health care, if I'm going to support universal education, retirement at 50, whether you retire or not, you receive retirement benefits at age 50. Every child from birth to 18 has a universal basic income that's put into place for them so that when they're 18, they have money waiting for them when they graduate high school. If I'm going to support that and make that a system that I think that everybody would love to be a part of and would be entitled to, then I have to have a way to pay for it, because we're talking trillions and trillions of dollars. If we were to tax every transaction, not just to the buyer, but also on the seller, there's over $100 trillion in transactions in the United States, and that does not count the Chicago Board of Trade, and that does not count the New York Stock Exchange, just the NASDAQ. I haven't even gotten into the New York Stock Exchange. Over $100 trillion. If we had a taxation on both the buyer and the seller at 10%, okay, and trust me, a UBI would then help, especially the lower income, because they're not going to get the taxes they get back now, but they're also not going to be paying the taxes that they pay now that they receive back. They get them up front because nothing's taken out of your paycheck. It's done at the point of purchase. And that would generate $20 to $30 trillion for our federal income tax, for our revenue. For right now, we have a ceiling of 31 trillion. We could generate almost that much in 1 year if this was our taxation system.
Well, Paul, this is what makes life interesting and politics interesting, because I would fight against your goal, which is to have all of this paid for. I don't want all of that. I don't want universal health care. I don't want universal basic income. I don't want I don't want, and I don't think you said this, but I don't want college to be tuition free and all the rest. I just, on principle, and this maybe one day, Paul, America will be there and they'll support all of this government support that you want. I think America's moving more in your direction than mine. I'll acknowledge that. But no, I'm not. I don't think all of that is good. Certainly, if we had all of that, we'd have to figure out how to pay for it, because we can't afford the government we have now. Not even close.
Right. The system I have, once you get to that in the book, you'll see that we could afford it. Okay. Now, I want to ask you, why would you be against all of these things when you are for infrastructure? Should we no longer fix roads? Should we no longer build bridges? Should we no longer, because these are all things that are also done for the public. Okay.
Oh, no. Paul, I agree. And this is generally what we argue about. And this is what I love. And in the before Trump times, you and me, we literally would debate and we'd have conversations about actual issues. That's what's fun about this, Paul. I agree with you. Generally, we argue about how much government should we involve to fix various problems in this country?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know many people who advocate no government at all, and I don't advocate no government at all. And I don't know anybody who advocates full communism, full socialism, put the government in charge of everything. Most Americans are somewhere center right or center left, and we're having this debate. How much government? Government has a role.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, how much of a role? Government's role in infrastructure, I think it's pretty clear that there's a really strong consensus, and there's been a consensus for a long, long time that the federal government has a major role to play when it comes to the infrastructure in this country, and I support that.
Right. Now, if we go back to Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, Congress has the right to lay and collect taxes, duties, excises, and imposts. There's a list of a whole bunch of things that money is supposed to go for. But the first two things, the two most important things, are the general welfare and the common defense of the people. Now, when I hear general welfare, I think health, education.
Well, what's interesting, Paul, for the general welfare, that's pretty broad and that's pretty vague. Our founders kept it pretty broad and pretty vague.
Mm-hmm.
And in essence, we've had a 230 some year debate about what general welfare means, because our Constitution also clearly lays out a structure of federalism, i.e.,
Mm-hmm.
the federal government should be responsible for some things, state government should be responsible, and local. We also have that debate in this country constantly. But you're right, that's what the debate is. What do we mean by general welfare?
Right. See, and I interpret that as health and education, because I want to believe that we would put people before property. And when I hear of roads, infrastructure, that's property, where education and health is people. And if we put education and health first, I think people become more productive. They become a productive member of society. If they're healthy, they're educated, they're fed, they're taken care of, they're going to want to be a more productive, which is going to stimulate the economy and all these other things that make the rich people happy anyways. I think it's a better long-term goal to take care of the people first and foremost, to put human rights above property rights.
It's a great, hey, Paul, this is a fun discussion. It really is, because when I think roads and bridges, those are things that benefit people, all of us. And my general view is, if we do the best we can to keep government out of our hair and let more of the American people keep more of the money they make, generally, I think that's what helps create opportunity for everybody in the country. And I think generally that philosophy has helped make America the most innovative and entrepreneurial country in the world. And I'll acknowledge, Paul, that has also created income inequality, no doubt.
Yes, yes. See, I'm going to go back to the whole infrastructure thing. The reason why I think that's more directed at property than people is because one of the things that I discovered is that the payroll, in my book, you'll read this, the payroll for the 129 million people that were working was $6.4 trillion, and 1.1 trillion of that was taken in federal taxes. Okay. Whereas people that, there's like 33 million businesses in the world. About 27 million businesses have people that have small businesses that have very few employees, and they account for 1.87 trillion in the taxes that was collected by the government. Whereas the corporations Okay, the corporations that have 95 trillion plus in transactional revenue was only taxed at 400 billion. And this is where I have an issue, is where these roads aren't being fixed for me to get to work. These roads are being fixed so that corporations can transport their stuff to each other, because that's where all the money is in these corporations doing business to business transactions with each other. The people, we're eventually going to be replaced by robots anyways. I mean, eventually we're not even going to be needed. So when we get to that point, then UBI is going to be even more prevalent in need. But prior to that, this is where I think we need to start looking at these things now on where we're, because the innovation is what you just mentioned and all that, how we're progressing forward. Elon Musk with Tesla has a robot, Optimus, that in 3 to 5 years, a self-learning robot that is going to know how to drill, is going to be able to learn to do all this manual labor stuff that I'm no longer going to be needed for. You're
Yeah,
no longer
but yes, my friend. Yes, I think AI is going to revolutionize the world of work and change the world of work. But I have faith in and believe in our entrepreneurial free market capitalist system to find a way to adjust and create additional opportunities for people. And I'd argue, Paul, that when you look at our history, when we move from an agrarian society into the Industrial Revolution, when you look at every stage of the improvement, in essence, of technology in our history, jobs have been lost, jobs have been created. That's what makes, I think, look, I know AI is scary, but I just believe it'll create other work opportunities for people. That's my hope.
Yeah. We have some more comments here. I'm going to go back to some of them. We have the Stoic Padawan. I think we should look more at ourselves instead of at others. Education is key to sustainable progress. Ray Dalio has an interesting view which shows that it rises and falls with education.
Amen. Amen, Stoic.
Yes.
Amen. Amen.
Okay. Let's see. As someone who works for a manufacturing company, roads and bridges are important for corporations as well. Which, yes.
Well, but again, I love you all. Jason, I love you. And Paul, I love you. Come on, guys. Roads and bridges are good for everybody. Everybody.
Yes, but monetarily, it benefits the corporations.
Paul, it benefits everybody. Without roads and bridges, I can't get to my job. I can't get in that Uber. That Uber driver can't drive. Right. Everybody benefits from improved infrastructure, which is why the federal government has always been predominant in that area.
Right. Okay. Everybody benefits. Does not everybody benefit with a basic universal income where it can help them pull up their bootstraps? It can help them educate their children, save for a rainy day. And if they're rich, they can invest it in Tesla. Doesn't it help them also?
Oh, Paul Sisler. Everybody listening to Paul and I right now, Paul supports giving a check, an additional government check to wealthy people in America every month. Oh, my word.
Yes.
Horrible. Because I think, look, Paul, you and I, this is fun. You and I will fight on this. I don't think the government should help anybody who can take care of themselves, period. Well, and by the way, that goes toward corporate welfare. We have too damn much corporate welfare in this country. You're right when you talk about how corporations have screwed up our tax system over the years to benefit them. And this has happened because of Republican and Democratic politicians. Generally, most Republican and Democratic politicians are all corporatists first. They all generally get their lobbying cues from corporate America. Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I rebel against that. I was a Tea Party congressman. Corporate America didn't like me. But I mean, simplify the tax code, Paul.
But see, where I'm saying, let's help everybody, even if it's a small amount. Whereas when corporations start to fail and it looks like, oh, the economy might be hurt by it, the government comes in and throws out billions of dollars to corporations.
Agreed. So they shouldn't do that. I agree with you. They shouldn't. Every time somebody needs to be bailed out, it's the corporations that are bailed out.
Yes.
So stop that. Stop that.
So how about we bail out the people just once?
Well, no. Well, we do as well. I mean, let's be real. It's not like there's no assistance there, Paul. When people go through tough times and they lose their job and they're down on their luck for a while, government does help. Let's be real. Government right now does help.
Yes.
I just don't want it to be permanent and guaranteed, because I believe that's a disincentive for able-bodied people to work. Help those who cannot take care of themselves. I want more government money around for the people who cannot take care of themselves, not the people who can.
Right. But see, here's where I think the miscommunication comes in, because the trials that have been done with UBI, where you're saying that people are just basically going to live off of a UBI if it's given to them, it's showing otherwise. They're not going out and wasting the money on drugs. The percentage is so small.
I'm not saying they'll do that.
They're actually bettering themselves. So I think that a UBI, giving that check to everybody, no matter what, is going to make people better themselves in the long run, because the test plans that they've done so far, it is working. Now, granted, long term, you might be right. But I don't think
we're talking small model programs in certain municipalities.
True.
Like our experience, Paul, with federal government assistance is always the same. We initially give it to a targeted group of people who need help, and then that targeted group of people grows. You and I talk about healthcare. You want universal healthcare for everybody. I don't want that. I want the government to pay for healthcare for people who can't pay for it themselves. The rest of us, I believe, should be paying more for our day-to-day healthcare expenses. And that way, by the way, again, the market guy I am, Paul,
right.
If more of us were more responsible for our day-to-day healthcare expenses, like why isn't health insurance treated like auto insurance? We don't use automobile insurance when we go put gas in our car or change the oil. It's there for extreme emergencies. Same thing for most of us when it comes to healthcare. We should pay for our day-to-day healthcare expenses, but those who can't pay for it at all, the government should help.
Okay. All right. We got lots of comments and questions here. America has become profit over people until the people become the focus, until the rich care about the rest of us. All of these problems will continue. We, the poor, are powerless to create change.
Okay, my only response to that would be, I appreciate what you say, but you cannot force rich people to care about all of us. I never want the government to force rich people to care about all of us. All of us need to encourage and incentivize rich people to care about all of us.
All righty. My only pushback on that is I believe that the corporations are the puppet masters of our government, and they are the rich and they control the policy. Let's see. The Stoic Padawan. AI will cause a major collective all right, I can't say the word. I don't know why my mouth isn't working.
Existential.
Thank you. When we no longer need to work for a real purpose, it will require us to make up jobs for us. How should we prevent this?
I go back, Paul, to what I said, Stoic. I just think at every intersection in our history where a new technology has been created, we are an entrepreneurial society, and other doors are opened and other work opportunities are created. I think that will happen with AI.
Okay, one nation, one people. I'm a single dad in PA. The only help I get is medical and $500 a month to feed us. That's it. The rest is up to me.
So my answer to one nation, one people would be, clearly sounds like a guy who could benefit from temporary assistance instead of me or that rich guy down the street. So I want my government to temporarily assist my single dad in PI and not give a universal basic income to middle class and wealthy people.
Okay. Let's see here. Bryce, wouldn't you agree that the current information digital revolution is far different than the previous industrial revolutions? The potential job displacement is far wider and steeper this time.
I would say, Bryce, I don't know. I'm sure that at every other stage, in every other digital informational revolution point in our history, they thought at that time, oh my God, there's never been anything like this. We're never going to recover. When we look at this new fangled farm equipment, look at what industries are doing, look at the internet. Oh my God, we're never going to be the same. I think this will be like that as well.
Okay.
I could be wrong. I could be very wrong, Bryce.
I disagree with you, Joe, because I'm with Bryce on this. I think this is very different this time. I think we're going to be seeing changes like we've never seen before. But we are going to know here is it's all going to start taking place very strongly in this next decade. So we will see.
Yep.
Okay. I want an actual healthcare system, not the current sickness management system.
Agree with that. Totally, Barbara, agree with that. Here's a big fear. Barbara nailed it. The biggest line item in our federal budget is healthcare for Americans as they get older and live longer. We need to really find innovative solutions to our healthcare, how we deliver healthcare, because this is the biggest line item and it's growing the fastest, not defense, not anything else.
Well, the thing that I have added, you're going to get to it in my book, is I have a cost of living amendment, which guarantees a wage equal to the cost of living. So whatever the cost of living is, that's always the minimum wage. Cost of living goes up, minimum wage goes up, cost of living goes down, minimum wage goes down. This kind of makes inflation impossible to get out of control, because if inflation starts to go up, then obviously the cost of living is going to go up along with the wage to meet it. Okay. So even if
we'll continue this, brother. You got a lot of interesting things in your book. We'll continue this dialogue.
The only thing I'm going to finish with is, even if we don't do all these other things that I said, this taxation system, I believe, will solve a multitude of our governmental problems in relation to where do we get the money, because the money is out there. They just need to install a system to collect it properly. And I think this way that I've developed is the way to do it. That would bring in $20 to $30 trillion a year and would benefit everybody. You don't have to file income taxes anymore. It's just simply you buy something, you're paying your taxes, and the seller's also paying.
I would agree with the premise of your problem. Our taxation system is fucked up. I would, and you and I can continue this. I've always generally believed in a more simplified tax system. I've always been intrigued by the notion of a flat tax or a national sales tax with a lot of variations. I believe that wealthy people and big corporations, all of these loopholes and everything else in our complicated, convoluted tax system benefit them and not us, because they hire the accountants and the lawyers to find every loophole under the sun to minimize what they pay.
And this would be a transactional tax. It eliminates the loopholes.
We'll continue that, Paul. Then I'll look at it.
Definitely. All right. I want to thank you. This has been a great conversation. I love someone that I can just go back and forth with on things. Again, these conversations are not happening in mainstream America. It's one side or the other. People are not having conversations. I think if you and I actually sat down and we went over things, I think we could come up with a lot of center ground, ideas that could benefit a lot of people.
Agreed.
So I look forward to somewhere down the line, you and I working together on a lot of things. I think that it could be beneficial to a lot of people if you're willing to do that.
Yes, the answer is yes. Paul, thank you for this. And I thank everybody and anybody who listened to us. Thanks, man.
All right. Don't take off after I close this out. I want to thank everybody that came in. Thank you. I appreciate it. And remember, be kind, be happy, and may good things come your way. Thank you.